content-wise, it's exceptionally shallow. Apart from the sailing around, which is basically kind of rehashing of the naval combat from Black Flag. You can get off the ship, but there's only specific areas you can walk around. There's invisible walls when you go on certain islands. You can harvest material from islands to fix your boat and upgrade it, but you don't actually get off the boat. It's just this little like quick time mini game to do it. It seems like for $70, there's nothing much there to do, even less so than Starfield, which was pretty impressive for Ubisoft to do. And a lot of it's just kind of, you've already got a bunch of whales, which are basically running the show in terms of, just chopping up small, tiny ships. Apparently they have guided missiles in the pirate universe. I don't know what's happening, but it's interesting to see that this game, which is just a bare bones rehashing of something that's close to a decade old concept, is now going for $70, and it's being vaunted AAA, the next new level of gaming that exists. Which AAA gaming has already been pretty bad to begin with. Now that we have the quadruple A game that's even less quality for more of a price, I think this is going to be a massive financial disaster for them. But if they end up releasing another Far Cry game, then maybe they'll recoup some of it. Let's take a look at this
pretty brutal reviews, or at least very middling for the critics, very bad for the user score. Mm-hmm. One thing I was thinking about when it came to video games and quality control, I feel as though video games are easier to gauge if they're fun or not, like objectively. Like I feel as though usually people are pretty unanimous in saying this is a great game, this is an okay game, this is a bad game. Like there's not, and you can like disagree on plot elements, you can disagree on, story decisions and things like that. But the core question is it fun to play the game? More so than that's why there are always debates on video games as art, because ultimately the core part of the game is the interactivity and the gameplay loop, which is like the term du jour these days is gameplay loop.
The replayability.
Well, just like, is it fun do you like playing it?
Yeah.
So what I find interesting is thinking about Skull and Bones, and do you think Ubisoft is surprised by the hostile reaction to their game? Do you think the developers are like, no, you're wrong, it's fun, this is fun, you're not having fun the right way? Or do you think they all were like, this isn't ready?
Yeah, so the thing you just said is that you're not having fun the right way, which is something that's very corporate speak, and it's very it's something that's also been popping up on the lips of a lot of players, because it's something I've noticed that came up with Starfield, where people were saying like, there's nothing to do, it's monotonous, there's so much, it's the same old Bethesda stuff like that. And then you have a bunch of hardcore players and they're like, well, I've got over 400 and some hours in this, and you're just not playing it the right way. You're not playing it the way that you're supposed to play it, or Bethesda expects you to play or something. And it's like, it's a Bethesda, like, and for a fact how I play Bethesda games. It's completely not how it's intended. I have no concept about the main storyline or the plot. Supposedly, I don't know. I mean, I'm just in the wasteland.
Why are you spoiling plot points from a game that's
Vader's Luke's father,
10 years old?
Snape killed Gandalf. All
right, Dad.
But when I was doing the same type of stuff in the newest Bethesda game, I wasn't having that fun factor, because for some reason I was able to have fun in the previous Bethesda games. So this new thing about like, you're not doing it the right way, it's a little condescending, and I feel like there are probably the suits which unfortunately run the show now, and their overlords tend to be the investors in these companies that expect a certain return on, quarterly stock, blah blah blah. I feel like they were honestly thinking that, oh, it's a pirate game made by Ubisoft, so people should just eat this up with a spoon. And when people got their actual hands on it, they're like, what is there to do other than what we've pretty much seen already in the preview gameplay videos?
Well, and it sounds to me, and you would know better than I, that it's it's a lesser version of the game they just released, which is the pirate version of what's the game?
Black Flag.
What's the property? What's the IP?
Assassin's Creed.
Assassin's Creed. Thank you.
Yeah, so Assassin's Creed Black Flag, and there's been a lot of videos now where on YouTube where they show you how sailing the ship was in Black Flag and how it is in Skull and Bones, how the combat was back there, your character moving and fighting and stuff. Like, supposedly your pirate character, when you board a ship, it's just it just shows you like the after effect. Like, you don't actually get on the enemy ship, or in Black Flag you got to swing on the ropes and play your, I love it because it's Errol Flynn. You don't fight anybody on land. It's like there's more content in the Microsoft pirate game, whatever that's called, like Sea of Thieves or whatever it is.
Wasn't that Amazon?
No, that was
the Amazon game.
The Amazon one made that weird Conquistador game.
What was the
like
game?
The Lost World or something, or
yeah. Oh, is that what it was? I know there was a game that bricked people's video cards, and I thought that was a pirate
that was
game.
the one.
Oh, okay. Right.
Yeah. But yeah, it's I kind of feel like they were just thinking that gamers were stupid. They hear AAA Gaming, it's like, ooh, wow. And, they'll overlook the $70 thing because they can always say, oh, well, it's a game as a service, because that's the new thing they're trying to push. And we'll just push out content updates down the road, with no legitimate roadmap to do it when we launch the initial game. Well,
I think that it's very difficult to find AAA, and by AAA I mean AAA. Find good AAA games.
Yeah,
and it's more disturbing to me because of, like I said, I feel like they know. I feel like the publishers and the developers know that they're releasing something that's not worth the money and not worth the time.
Yeah, I feel like the men and women that are in the trenches, in the actual day-to-day programming, writing script, doing the testing, they know what's going to happen. I feel like middle management in a lot of these places, at the development, and probably some of the higher ups in the dev company kind of have an idea, but because the publisher pretty much runs the show now, they have to put something out.
Yeah, they just want to force it out.
Yeah, and that's the unfortunate thing. And then you end up hearing stuff where it's like, well, the game didn't sell X amount of copies. And like we just saw recently with various publishers laying off a whole bunch of staff, that's kind of thing. Because somebody said that like the new Spider-Man game didn't hit X amount of copies. It made a lot of them, like 2 million or something like that. But it's because it didn't, it's not good enough.
I just feel, though, once again, and my position on this is that gamers are doing this to themselves by pre-ordering and not waiting to see what the actual game is.
Yes.
It's like
Starfield.
I wasn't going to say it, but I was baffled that you pre-ordered a game after Cyberpunk. I mean, there's a whole meme about this, and you just said, I know, I'm smarter than that. You're like, oh. Hey, if you get lucky, in 10 years, maybe the Starfield will be fun to play also.
Where I can play it on my like GTX 9000 series card. Yeah, I mean, I will definitely learn my lesson now, and I will be buying a lot more smaller mid-market games that pique my interest. Or like, I've got over 140 games on my GOG. I've got 120 some on my Steam. I've got
start working your way through the backlog.
Yeah, and I finally finished the Yakuza series. Yakuza 6 was fantastic, very endearing and gut-wrenching at the very end. And it was a very nice, bookend to the saga of Kiryu Kazuma.
It's I know a good game when I play it.
Mm-hmm.
It's very easy for me to say, oh, I don't want to stop. It's when you're like, I don't want to. I want to stop playing this game because I don't want to finish it too soon. Like that's
right.
That's a good game. And it's funny because like games like Titanfall 2, I commend anyone who touched that game and I mention it, they're like the young person at work. I casually mentioned Titanfall 2 and he's like, that's one of my favorite single player games. Mm-hmm. And I'm like, yeah, it's just self-evident. If you're okay playing first person shooters, the campaign is fantastic. And it's just everyone pretty much agrees.
Yeah. It's unfortunate because that's something that a lot of first person the genre itself really kind of doesn't exist anymore in that sense. For the single player experience. Now it's all just multiplayer and online. Right. And the multiplayer on that is fantastic still too. But unfortunately it's because Respawn kind of is now tied, unfortunately, to just doing nothing but Apex.
I think they're doing a Star Wars game next.
Well, anyways, but yeah, it's kind of like the same way you and I have exceptionally fond memories of Halo 2 multiplayer.
Well, and it's funny because I was actually going to think of Halo as an example of games where I didn't necessarily agree with the story beats in Halo 2 and Halo 3 in particular. Mm-hmm. But even still, I think fondly of those games, even the single player stuff. I still feel fondly because the single player gameplay was satisfying and was fun. And I can remember doing stuff like, oh, it's so cool. And this is a great set piece. And like the Scarab fight in Halo 2, and then the multiplayer is its own beast, but still they were fun games above all. Yeah. And that's what counts in a video game.
Yeah. And it's something to be said also that when you, games that are good, like I've never played it, but I know Final Fantasy VII is a game that's endeared over the 30 years now at this point, and they just keep remaking it and stuff like that, and people go back to play it. And then you have people like, I don't know who, somebody either at PlayStation a number of years ago or even Ubisoft were saying like, oh, who wants to play those old games? Those games are blah. And it's like, yeah, but you put out the trash that you have now and people see it for what it is, and then you blame.
I mean, that's just...
You're not the one who's willing to take the blame. You put the blame on the consumer.
Well, the thing is that's just incredibly tone deaf when emulation and retro gaming are bigger than ever. And it reminds me of people... There was just an article that came out that was like, why are old TV shows like Seinfeld and Frasier and Gilmore Girls and all of these old sick Friends, why are the streaming numbers so much higher for these old shows than they are for new shows? Mm-hmm. I wonder why are so many people playing retro games, and why are retro, like physical consoles and cartridges, are going up to astronomical, insane prices because of supply and demand.
Why are the more popular games that people want to play now retro style, or they are older games that have now gotten like a remaster? That's like the new thing.
What makes me sad about all of that is that I don't like the stagnation of popular
creativity.
Creativity and popular culture itself, because this doesn't just apply to video games. This applies to cinema, and I mean literature maybe not so much, music definitely, where it just turns into recycling things that have come before with a slightly different shade of paint, but it's the same product. It's 80s synth repackaged as synthwave, retrowave, yeah.
Any of that stuff, vapor,
Or it's like it's the new Star Wars movie. It's Dune again. It's all of these things that we've had before, and not something new.
Yeah, or Disney doing all these live action versions of their old films.
And it bothers me because it's like that's not how it ever was. It's like one thing that I've noticed, and I think I've talked about it on the show before. It's like in when we were kids, we told our parents what was cool. We were like, I love He-Man. I want He-Man. I want Ninja Turtles. I want G.I. Joe. Parents were like, okay, G.I. Joe. Here's a G.I. Joe. Nowadays, parents are like, you like He-Man, you like G.I. Joe, you know what I mean? It's like now the parents are telling the kids what's cool. There's something has gone awry there a little bit.
Right. Yeah. And I mean, I'm trying to, in terms of my own kids, like there's current cool things. Like I started like during COVID, like I started playing Fortnite and stuff.
Right.
Because it was like a cool popular thing. And then that's how Nicholas has gotten into wanting to do Fortnite, which in fact in several weeks we're actually going to have one of Erica's cousins come over and we're going to have like our Fortnite LAN party here.
Oh, nice.
So it's going to be Nicholas here at the computer, I'll be on the TV, and then the cousin will be hooking up his Switch in the bedroom and use that. And it'll be kind of like how we sort of did it back with the Halo party, because it was fun doing something like that, and it's you can all be together doing something that's all kind of online.
There's crossplay with the Switch. Gotcha.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Cool.
And it's also like me being like, hey, I'm watching this cool show. It's called Power Rangers, or Ninja Turtles is a great example. And he's like, oh, can I watch like the old version Ninja Turtles? But then he also likes the more recent CG Ninja, like Nickelodeon version stuff. So there's this connection that we're able to have.
But that's my point though, is why is there a new Ninja Turtles? Why is Ninja Turtles constantly being recycled? Why are all the things that we grew up with that were for us when we were kids, why do they just get recycled for the next generation? I think that's a problem. I think that's a big problem.
I think a problem, there is a problem with it. And I think that the newer generations, I don't think they have as much of a interest in it as we did. I feel like a lot of these remakes, while they're kind of intended for young people, they kind of think that the old fans are going to find interest in it and kind of be willing to spend money because they're older and they have jobs and disposable income, so they can kind of get this stuff, while all we sort of want is can you just remake new episodes of the original series, or just basically remake all the old toys and stuff. And the He-Man line did that recently.
I would say that ultimately the failure of Zoomers is a failure of millennials.